Well, here's the thing: is that the Chrono Cyborg was one of the biggest fights in the history of our company, and I think this this fight ratings-wise could be right up there or greater than, and I think that when you talk about what's relevant today, this is the fight, and for all the fans or reporters or the fighters, especially from Sarah, Sarah's position about this fight, she doesn't deserve to fight. I totally disagree. I mean, this to me, Ronda has proven herself to be worthy of this title shot, and that's why we gave it to her.
And Dana has been saying that he wants to get control of Strikeforce and have his own vision, and once he does, it'll be better for everyone. There seems to be a disconnect there, maybe between Showtime and his vision. Where do you stand? Not trying to get you in trouble.
Well, you know what? It's to me that's a conversation that I think is happening between Dana and Showtime, and so let's just leave it at that. You know how to get a hold of Dana, so give him a call.
I have a question for each of the ladies. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about examples of like discrimination or people almost looking down on you that you've had to overcome in your years in MMA.
That was for both of us?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been an interesting ride, that's for sure. Being a woman in the sport, it's a little different than the men in that I feel a lot of times we have to work a little bit harder to get that acceptance. But I do find that, with the proper work ethic and, not complaining or being, girly inside the practice room, that it definitely garners respect. I've never really had any issue in getting any male athletes to have respect for me. I always work hard and I don't complain and show up and I do just as the boys do. So, it's just a matter of breaking barriers, changing minds, opening people's minds to the fact that women can do just the same as the men do. Biologically, obviously, we're a little different, but we can be just as technical, we can work just as hard, and we deliver amazing fights. So what more can you ask for?
For Miesha and Ronda. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, I agree with her on a lot of that. It's harder when you're a girl because you can't just walk into a new gym and have people respect you just from your record or your history. And you kind of have to prove yourself to each new group of people at a time. You don't have any success that carries over in the way that men do. So, when I first started MMA, the first gym that I went to, no one would pay attention to me or help me at all. And, they asked me to pay too much that I couldn't afford. So I went to a different gym, and the GFC where I am now, and the coach wouldn't spend any time on me, and I just put in my head that I was going to force these people to respect me. And so I came in there earlier than any of the guys did, and I left after all the guys were done. I made sure that I was training before them and I was training after them. And this went on for 2 months before my coach actually did any kind of network with me. And, you have to do twice as much work to get an equal amount of respect, and I'm willing to put that work in because, unfortunately at this time it's necessary.
To kind of follow up on that a little bit, it seems like in pushing this fight, people either look at it as two top 135ers in the world or two hot chicks fighting. Does that bother you if it's marketed that way, your looks over what you can actually do in the cage?
Well, unfortunately, yeah, it's just a part of the game. I would like to see the evolution of women's MMA get to a point where we're respected first and foremost as athletes and for our skill set and the skills and fighting ability that we deliver in the cage. And secondly, what we are outside the cage. And we all have our own way of marketing ourselves, and I think that there's nothing wrong with the way that anyone decides to do it. Fortunately for myself, I definitely find myself tending to be more feminine outside the cage, and I think that's all right. And that's the direction I'd like to see women's MMA go. Is definitely respected as an athlete first and foremost, and for whatever else afterwards. But, we have women are marketed differently. Period. It doesn't matter what you're selling. Women have a different selling point, and I think that angle is always going to be played up upon. So just something that we are going to continue to work with.
For Miesha and Ronda, you both are very... That's two. Well, I see the looks part, I think, is more of a gimmick. You get people to look originally that don't know anything about women's MMA or even MMA in general, because it's something different. I mean, when do you see two girls fighting and when do you see two good-looking girls fighting? It's something that people will stop and look at. And, if you see two girls fighting on a playground or something like that, you'll stop and look and be like, hey, look, it's two girls fighting, and then, you'll keep walking. You don't keep fans like that. but I think that you can get people, to stop and look for a second with that. You don't retain fans with a gimmick, but you rope them in the first place with that. And I think that, that's why we don't see ring girls fighting, because, yeah, sure, they're pretty, but, if you actually stop and, after you're like, oh, there's two pretty chicks fighting, you're like, oh, Jesus, it's a disaster. And then, you'd move on, you wouldn't watch the rest of it. But if you first stop and go, oh, those two pretty girls fighting, like, oh my God, that was a really cool, head kick. Oh my God, I've never seen a takedown like that before. Oh my God, that's a great transition to the ground. Then it's the actual sport and skill that makes people stay. But you got to show them something bright and shiny to look in the first place.
Could I just ask you? Do you think you're talking about kind of sexuality and all those kind of things? Do you think it's more important to change the minds of men than women, from your perspective in MMA?
Well, men's minds definitely work differently than women's.
That's true.
Yeah, so I can't, exactly say how it works, but, I have a pretty good idea. I think, based kind of going off what Ronda said, that is the truth of the matter. If we can get something to draw the attention and then deliver the skill set, that's where we're going to start to change the minds of the men and women as well. But I think our main audience is men, so we're going to target that a little bit more. I think the women are an easier sell because they see women, they don't care if they're pretty or they're not, they just like the fighting. The men are a little different. They want to see the pretty girls, then they see the skill set delivered, and they become fans of us as athletes. And then maybe later down the road, it won't take as much of the pretty angle to get them to actually enjoy the entertaining fight.
Are you the same, Ronda, that you want to change the minds of men?
I disagree a little bit more because, yes, more of the MMA demographic is men, but I think that with putting on more women's fights, you would appeal to more women, and if you started attracting just as many women as men, you would have twice as many fans. And it does help to change, to get the men looking as well because they're already MMA fans, but I think that promoting women's MMA fights, I've had so many women come up to me and be like, I was never into MMA before until I saw you ladies fighting, and now I love it, now I'm into it. Oh my God, I love watching you guys fight. I want a body like that. I started doing MMA because I saw you girls and you're gorgeous and I want to look just like you, I think that one demographic isn't more important than the other, but I think that it is, we got to try our best to appeal to both.
But you did ask about changing the mindset, though, right? That's what I'm talking about. I think the women don't necessarily need the change. I think they're already kind of on board when they see it. They're like, yeah, we're all on board. The men are kind of like, oh, we don't know. Are these women just as good? Or they have more doubt in us because men kind of seem to hold themselves here and women here a little bit, So it's changing that so for them to see us as equals and that we can deliver the fighting ability just as well as the men.
This summer in London, women's boxing goes into the Olympics for the first time. 3 weight categories. Flyweight, lightweight, and welterweight, and middleweight. Sorry. Do you think that a lot of people think that with women's boxing going into the Olympics, it'll have a huge impact on the development of women's boxing? Would you like to see women's MMA get into the Olympics, and do you think it'll get in before men's ever does?
I mean, the Olympics. I think it'd be very difficult to get MMA into the Olympics. MMA is a very graphic sport, and the Olympics is a very politically correct event. And I think if you were going to want to see MMA in the Olympics, it would have to be some sort of softer version of it, just like boxing in the in the Olympics is not like pro boxing.
3 rounds. Or...
Yeah, and then they don't get points for jabs or whatever. It's like. So I think if you were ever to see MMA in the Olympics, there would have to be like headgear or shin pads or bigger gloves or something like that. They would have to change the rules of the sport to see it, more likely to get accepted. And plus, it's like, how are you gonna, do it? Because MMA, it's so hard on your body. You can only fight every couple of months, really. I mean, you can fight several times in a day, but you can't do that on a regular basis. So they would have to make it a little softer MMA to be an amateur style, I think, for it to work.